For years, Mel Gibson has been one of the most controversial names in Hollywood, period. His public image, well, it seemed pretty much set in stone. But now, in the shadow of the whole Jeffrey Epstein scandal, a completely different story is starting to surface. It's one that completely reframes his past and makes you ask a really shocking question. Was he the villain we all thought he was? Or was he a whistleblower that nobody wanted to listen to?
Okay, so this really gets to the heart of it. On one side, you have the Mel Gibson we think we know. You know, the high-profile scandals, getting pretty much blackballed by the industry, and some really serious accusations of hate speech. But the source material we're digging into today, it paints an entirely different picture. A guy who was supposedly trying to expose the industry's darkest secrets, who was warning people about abuse, and who was ultimately silenced because of it.
So where is this whole whistleblower idea even coming from? Well, according to the source, Gibson's problems didn't just start with his famous public meltdowns. No, the argument is that he was ostracized way, way earlier, back when he first started trying to talk about the darkness he was seeing in Hollywood. And the source lays out this timeline, this pattern of warnings that started long before his career really took a nosedive. It alleges that way back in 1993, Gibson was giving names of alleged abusers to the cops. Then, fast forward 5 years to 1998, and he's on the record calling Hollywood a weird town with some deep, dark secrets. This all kind of came to a head in 2004 when he had to fund The Passion of the Christ himself because apparently no major studio would touch it. That really cemented his reputation as an industry outsider. And you can really hear what he was thinking in this quote from back in '98. It's got this mix of confusion and suspicion, right? He calls Hollywood a weird town, a place where people tell you, don't go to the house on the hill. He's describing this almost paranoid feeling that something was just fundamentally wrong right under the glitzy surface. So this is the really crucial point the source makes. The argument is that Gibson was essentially blackballed, not for his later, more infamous scandals, but for these early attempts to speak out. In their words, he was canceled before canceling was even a thing, with studios apparently refusing to work with him long before any of that stuff became public. Okay, so how do these sort of vague warnings from the '90s connect to what's happening now? Well, the source draws a direct and, frankly, a chilling line from what Gibson called his paranoid suspicions to the absolutely horrific real-world details that came out years later with the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. And this quote right here, this is the pivot point. This is where Gibson looks back on those early feelings and basically says, you find out later on that what you were worried about, what you were afraid of, it wasn't paranoia, it was real. And that reality, as we saw in the Epstein Files, was way more horrific than most of us could have ever imagined. You know, the release of the Jeffrey Epstein Files was a total bombshell. It just blew the lid off a level of depravity that was, for a lot of people, completely unthinkable. And all of a sudden, it cast this new, terrifying light on all those old rumors and warnings that had been brushed aside for so many years. I mean, the details that came out were just stomach-turning. The source talks about allegations of videos showing girls being chased, that disgusting quote from Epstein where he dehumanizes his victims, and the fact that hundreds of gallons of sulfuric acid were purchased, a chemical that, yes, can dissolve human remains. These were the worst nightmares Gibson was talking about, now out in the open for everyone to see. And this all brings us to the climax of this whole narrative, the movie Sound of Freedom. Now, according to the source, this film, which Gibson produced and which stars Jim Caviezel, who was also in The Passion of the Christ, it's not just a movie. It's being framed as the final product, the culmination of their decades-long mission to expose these exact crimes. And the plot of the movie? It reads like a direct parallel to the real-world horrors we're talking about. It's about kids who get lured away by a fake talent scout, which is a classic trafficking tactic, and a government agent who goes rogue, dedicating his life to saving them and running sting operations to catch the bad guys. And you can't argue with the film's impact. On a pretty small budget, just $14.5 million, it went on to make a staggering $250 million. It wasn't just another movie. It became a full-blown cultural event. It dragged the topic of child trafficking right into the mainstream conversation in a huge way. And here's the kicker. The central argument from the source is that the plot points in the movie aren't just fiction. It claims that everything from the fake modeling scouts to the hints of these horrific parties where powerful people prey on children, it's all a direct parallel to the methods and the reality of the Jeffrey Epstein case. So, what now? After decades of being a pariah in Hollywood, and now with this explosive new context and a blockbuster movie under his belt, what happens next?
Mel Gibson's career and really his entire public legacy is at this massive crossroads.
Which leaves us with the big provocative question that the source itself asks. Can this new narrative, this total reframing of Mel Gibson from villain to whistleblower, actually revive his career? Or are the things he's done in the past just unforgivable no matter what? That's the debate that's raging right now.